All right, it's now my privilege to bring to you our next paper, which is Tate Hertel and his paper, A Study in Economics.
Study in economics. Many forms of economic systems have been created. While unique in their creation and use, they are not all created equal, and therefore some are more efficient at creating prosperity than others. A common goal among economies is fashioning the happy state, not piecemeal, or with the view of making indeed happy citizens, but as a whole. Throughout the ages, economies have changed from the rule of simple fiscal situations in small tribes to the establishment of highly complicated systems in large countries. In the same way, money has become increasingly complex over time. Before the invention of paper money, people obtained the goods they needed through barter, a system in which participants directly exchanged goods or services for other goods or services without using any medium of exchange, such as money. Due to the arbitrary nature of determining value, a system of barter can result in disagreements and difficulties. So the solution to these issues, the development of money allows for a much faster and more accurate transfer of wealth. Today, money has many different forms. It may take a physical form, such as coins or notes, or may exist as a written or electronic account. Three main types of money have been used throughout history. The first is commodity money, whose intrinsic value comes from its substance. The second is representative money. This is any medium of exchange, often printed on paper, with little or no value of its own, representing something of intrinsic value which supports its face value. The third and last is fiat money, which is a currency without intrinsic value that has been established as money, often by government regulation. Due to the difference in objective worth, the value of money can vary widely. The evolution of money over time has impacted the development and complexity of economic systems, allowing them to become what they are today. Many different forms of economies have been used throughout the ages. Three modern economies, Marxism, capitalism, and free market, will be compared to the ideal economy set forth in Plato's Republic, which is a term which is best suited for the most efficient creation of prosperity. The Greek philosopher Plato lived during the classical period. As the founder of the first school of higher learning in the Western world, his ideas remain worthy of examination today. The Republic, one of his best-known works, has been intellectually and historically influential in some of the world's most important works of philosophy and political theory. In the Republic, which describes his plans for an ideal state, Plato outlined what he believed to be the best form of economic system. To fully understand his economic system, one must first have a basic understanding of its perfect state, as the state and economy are always intertwined. Plato thought that a state should be an absolute monarchy ruled by a philosopher. He argued that a philosopher would know and want what is best, and, as monarch, would have the power to act upon his inclination. There would be no hereditary succession to the throne. Rather, there should be an election from the guardian class to ensure that each successive monarch would be the best ruler. Plato's ideal society would be composed of three classes: gold, silver, and bronze. Citizens, we shall say to them in our tale, you are brothers. Yet God has framed you differently. Some of you have the power to command, and in the composition of these he has mingled gold, and therefore also they have the greatest honor. Others he has made of silver to be auxiliaries. Others again, who are to be the husbandmen and craftsmen, he has composed of brass and iron. In this socio-economic system, the lower classes would have no part in the ruling of the state. They would simply obey the laws and do what was required. The governing class would be guided by logic, allowing them to make the best possible choices for their people. The same person would always perform the same job, allowing him to become extremely skilled in his work. In this ideal community, the society and economy would always be stable. People would have what they needed and would be well cared for. Because Plato crafted what appears to be an efficient form of economic system that has served as a model for future generations, his economic theory would be used as the basis for comparison between the competing economic theories. In 1818, Karl Marx was born. and with his life would come the creation of an economic system of Marxism. An economist, philosopher, historian, and psychologist, Marx published the first volume of Das Kapital in 1867, outlining what he believed was the most just and therefore best economic system for a country. His vision included a system of equality with no social class distinctions. Additionally, he argued, there should be no private businesses, government controlling all the resources and means of production. The fact that the government of use, values, or goods is carried on under the control of the government, we believe theoretically ensures equality among the population, since there would be no private business, being equal for individuals to amass more wealth than anyone else. The government would directly control the quality and quantity of production, leading to a safer standard and a better distribution of goods. What one could buy, everyone would be able to buy. Nothing would be beyond government control. Even prices would be determined by the government. Marx believed that this extreme governmental control would lead to the ideal goal of Marxism, a state of complete equality among its people. Nearly a century earlier in Scotland, the future was likewise impacted by the birth of Adam Smith. Adam Smith was an economist, philosopher, author, and moral philosopher. While lecturing at the University of Edinburgh, he worked closely with David Hume, known for his book, A Treatise of Human Nature, during the Scottish Enlightenment. The two developed a friendship that would last a lifetime and greatly influenced Smith's later work. Once Smith returned home to Kirkcaldy, he wrote his magnum opus, The Wealth of Nations, published in 1776. It was an instant success, with its first edition selling out in the first 6 months. In this book, Smith described what he believed would be the best form of economic system for a government to employ, that of a capitalist economy. According to Smith, it is easier to understand how a capitalist economy affects society in general if we first look at how it operates in some particular instances. In a capitalist economy, production of goods serves solely to make a country and its people wealthier. Smith believed that capitalism would help reduce greed, since goods and services would be sold for the lowest amount possible in order to attract the most customers. In addition, Smith believed that capitalism would unite people in common interests for the betterment of society. This battle for customers would lead, at least hypothetically, to a society in which everyone would work for the good of everyone else. In 19th century France, economic term laissez-faire, which means hands-off, was first used. Though not marking the birth of the concept of the free market, this terminology captures its spirit. Free market is an economy in which the prices of goods are regulated by society as a whole, not by governments or other outside entity. In a free market, laws of supply and demand are removed from government control, making it truly free, or laissez-faire. Whereas in a controlled market, the government can leverage control through the use of tariffs. A truly free market economy will have the prices of goods and services determined by the laws of supply and demand. The laws of supply and demand state that everything else being equal, in a competitive market, the price for goods or services will fluctuate until it reaches an equilibrium at the point where the quantity needed will equal the quantity supplied, balancing the prices and the quantity transacted. In addition to the law of supply and demand, sweat equity makes it impossible for a price to continue to drop below a certain point. The laborer adds fresh value to the subject of his labor by expending upon it a given amount of additional labor, no matter what the specific character and utility of that labor may be. The laborer must expend time and material to create a finished product. The result of this law is, of course, the listed price. Services are a similar process, as competition forces companies to provide the best service for the lowest price. And so a wise consumer would not choose to pay more if the same service was available at a lower price. The result of a laissez-faire market is clear. In a free market economy, people would sell the best product or service they could for as little as possible, hoping to attract and keep the most business. Marxism shares several central ideas with the system described in Plato's Republic. In both Republic and Das Kapital, the proposed ideal society would be built on multiple classes. Plato envisioned a society calling for classes of gold, guardian, silver auxiliaries, and bronze producers. Marx called for two classes, the capitalists or bourgeois, and the workers or proletariat. The capitalist buys labor power in order to use it, and labor power is in use as labor itself. The capitalist owns the means of production and purchases the labor of the workers, essentially creating indentured servitude. The workers own no means of production or ability to purchase labor. Rather, they sell their own labor power. Both economic systems are built on the same fundamental principles regarding power. Those with power will retain that power, and vice versa. No opportunity exists for those of lower status to better themselves. Social rights are received through birth, not skill. Birthrights are very important polarity because it completely changes social interaction and the right of individuals. In both economic systems, the upper class, or ruling class, would have no reason to respect those in the lower class. They would be raised to believe that they were better than everyone else, and would act accordingly. The working class would have no way to better their position in life. They would be expected to obey all orders without question. The core ideas in Marxism are very similar to those found in Plato's economic system, specifically the concept of static social classes. The foundations of Adam Smith's idea of capitalism and Plato's ideal society are also similar in a variety of ways. Plato's system requires everyone to look for the common good, which also occurs in capitalism. Striving for the common good would create, at least in theory, the greatest improvements in the productive power of labor. Whether a producer or a ruler, every citizen in a republic has a single specific job to perform, and it is through these labors that the state is furthered. In a capitalist society, goods are produced directly for the creation of wealth, benefiting the society as a whole. In both instances, the work being done is not for personal gain, but for the benefit of all. Capitalist society has no different classes. Everyone has the ability to become whatever he chooses. This is a key difference between capitalism and Plato's economic system. In most instances, however, both of these societies eliminate greed reasonably well. In a capitalist society, people produce goods and services directly for the creation of wealth in a society. The same is true in Plato's Republic. People work together to support the state, not for individual gains. In the Republic, the removal of greed is further enforced by inflexibility of class. A producer will always remain a producer. This concept is not mirrored by capitalism. The concept possesses no truly different classes between which people could move. While it is true that capitalism and Plato's economic theory share several central ideas, those ideas are developed in different ways, most notably in capitalism's lack of class distinction and Plato's need for monarchy. Free market theory appears to have the least in common with the concept developed by Plato. In both the free market and Plato's economic system, there is an entity that rules for the common good, and a state which is ordered with a view to the good of the whole. Plato's ruling entity would be, of course, the philosopher king. In a free market, however, the market, or entirety of the people, decide what is best for society as a whole. In the Republic, the three classes are static. The citizen, born into a class, will remain in that class for his lifetime. In a free market, however, classes are always fluctuating, and people have the ability to move from one to another. This is an important distinction, as it allows and offers incentive for individual betterment. In a free market, there is reason to thrive, grow, and expand. In Plato's society, there is no chance to improve one's station in life. Plato's ideal society strives for the betterment of the state, removing greed. Though, theoretically, a genuinely free market could serve this function as well. In order to gain business, people must possess some advantage over their competition, whether it is a better product, cheaper price, or a better reputation, to distinguish themselves from their competitors. Hence, people will not put an unfairly high price on a product, as no one would buy it if it would require the exact same product for less. While the free market is the most different from Plato's economic system of the three systems, they do share some similarities, such as the desire to remove greed and an entity ruling for the common good. All three economic systems, Marxism, capitalism, and free markets, have been compared to Plato's Republic, all of which have at least some similarities to Plato's ideal. The next logical step is to compare the systems to one another and determine if they are similar in fundamental ways. All three systems share a common goal, the betterment of the whole. This improvement can take different shapes: better housing, food, better medicine, a better product, a cheaper price, or a faster service. The result is the same. In a free market economy, betterment can be found at both the individual and the societal level. This betterment on an individual level is also possible in a capitalist economic system. While societal betterment is possible in a Marxist system, it is not possible on an individual level due to birthrights and static classes. For an individual to better himself, the entire society must be bettered at the same time in the same way. In a Marxist economic system, the person wanting to better himself must before all things expend labor on something useful, on something capable of satisfying a want of some sort. This means that personal gain in a Marxist economy has been greatly diminished. Marxism shares the least similarities with capitalism and free markets. And while they might be similar, free market and capitalism differ in several fundamental ways. Next, it is necessary to examine the differences in the three forms of economic system. Marxism shares the least with capitalism and free market in regards to the development of social classes. In a capitalist economy and in a free market, the social classes are always changing. It is important to consider the particular form of state the economic system assumes under given social conditions. One might have been born in poverty and yet become the richest person in, or even the ruler of the country. Only in Marxism can the poor not become wealthy, or vice versa. In the others, the distinction between poor and rich is constantly changing. This opportunity for prosperity greatly increases incentive to be a productive member of society. In regards to the valuation of a product or service, Marxism also differs from both capitalism and free markets. Value is decided by the government in a Marxist society, while in capitalism and free market economic systems, value is decided by society as a whole. Government delay in responding to changes in the needs or desires of the people has the potential to be a large problem for a Marxist nation. In contrast, government delay is not a problem for either capitalism or free markets. At the root of these three systems differ so greatly that it makes little difference if the tops of the trees touch or intertwine. If there are extreme differences, it is clear that one economic system must be better than others for general society. In this style of reductio ad absurdum, let the argument be made that Marxism is the best form of economic structure. Marxism is the best form of economic structure because everything is controlled by the government. Ideally, will have everyone's best interest at heart. No one would ever have to worry about the lack of care or protection. However, a government is easily corrupted. Too much power will turn any man's head and heart. Once the government, or those controlling the government, loses the desire to keep the best interests of its people, everything will unravel. The economic system will either fail and the government will become focused on its own good and desires. Second, and at least equally important problem, is the speed of responding to a constantly changing nation. Since the government is the one setting the prices, it must also be the one to adjust the prices when necessary. This might sound easy when one considers a single store, but the problem explodes when one considers the magnitude of an entire country and its wide variations in cost of living. The adjustment of prices could take weeks or even months. The potential for corruption in government and the impossibility of one entity dictating the economy of a huge nation suggests that Marxism is not the most practical choice for an economic system. Since it has been determined that Marxism is not the most ideal form of economic structure, and capitalism is the best, most efficient form of economic system. The people produce the goods and services directly for the creation of wealth in a society. Every man is rich or poor according to how much he can afford to enjoy the necessities, conveniences, and pastimes of human life. In the eyes of the law, everyone is equal. No one can claim to be better than another in a capitalist nation. This, of course, is what a perfect society should look like, where God said. So Peter opened his mouth and said, Truly, I understand the God shows no partiality. However, this equal society might not be quite as perfect as first thought. In a capitalist economy, prices are or can be determined by the manufacturer, but the government can also impose price regulations or tariffs. While prices might be able to be corrected if it is not interfered with, the government would have the ability to impose mandatory prices. Due to the interference of government in society, it is clear that capitalism is not an ideal economic system for mankind. Lastly, a free market is declared to be the best form of economic structure. Society as a whole decides what it will and will not pay for goods and services. Correction of prices, goods, and services will be easy, shifting gradually with the tides of people's needs and desires. By following current market demands, suppliers can work to better their products, thereby receiving more business. In addition, people have private incentive to research new and expanding fields. Researching new fields might be wise action, might also be fueled by greed, with people only interested in their personal reward, regardless of its benefit to society. However, there are a host of reasons why a person would explore new fields other than greed. The risk of investigating a new technology can be astronomical. Maybe no one would be interested. Maybe the technology would be unexpectedly dangerous or even lethal. The reward has to exceed the risk, or no one would explore new ideas and dreams. In the end, it is far from perfect. The free market does appear to offer the most stimulation for economic prosperity, and thus the most efficient form of economic system to employ. In conclusion, a free market, while it is not perfect, is the best choice for an economic system. Other economic systems might at times be effective to employ, however, it is also much easier for them to become corrupted and fail to function as first intended. This is not necessarily a flaw in the economic system. The flaw could potentially be in those using it. While Plato had a promising theory about an ideal economy, his was an excellent example of human flaws leading to the failure of a system. This catastrophic flaw exists in the ruler who loses sight of the good of his people. Even if he is not acting out of self-interest, given enough time and power, temptation would grow and the ruler's will to good would slowly crumble. The same downfall might occur in a capitalist economy. Temptation to help the people would lead the ruler to interfere with pricing, potentially causing a huge amount of damage to society. Even without its potential for government corruption, Marxism, while a worthy system, sets itself an impossible task. The effort of setting millions of prices once would be daunting, but adjusting to the constant would be impossible. Yes, of course, we use a free market as the good choice for the most efficient economic system. Free market will not cater to an individual, but will give the majority of the people what they want. Plato admitted, our aim in founding this Tate was not the disproportionate happiness of any one class, but the greatest happiness of the whole. A free market, in most cases, offers the most efficient creation of prosperity, and therefore is the most responsible form of economic system to employ.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hertel. All right, I would like to begin with some points of clarification. I would like to begin with you distinguishing for us between capitalist economy and free market economy. Those terms are usually used interchangeably, and you seem to have made a distinction between them. And I was wondering if you could clarify a little further what that distinction is that you're making.
Okay, yes, I'm using free market as in the government will have absolutely no control whatsoever over the economy. They would not have the power to impose any regulations whatsoever on it, whereas in a capitalist society, the government does have that power. So that is the distinction that I'm drawing.
All right, so perhaps your understanding of free market economy is something more like a laissez-faire economy with very little government regulation. And capitalist is something with a sort of minor amount of government regulation upon business.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much for that clarification. All right, then, I guess the main argument that you made against Marxism is the possibility of government becoming corrupt. And when you give government the ability to have a rule over a particular people, and its economy, then the corruption of that government would lead to a government that's very powerful and capable of having a huge amount of influence on people's economic interactions. My question to you about your free market or laissez-faire economy is there not also the same possibility in such a economy for the corruption of business and the fact that business owners would be under the possibility of becoming corrupt and misusing the employees that are hired by them?
Misusing them in what way?
I'm sorry, I could not hear your comment.
Misusing them in what way?
Oh, certainly. Okay. Like we were discussing in the last lecture, the lecture before last, the possibility that there would be businesses that give people work to do that might be profitable for the business, but are perhaps detrimental to the people's long-term good, setting them to some sort of extraordinarily repetitious task that would be mentally degrading, and over time, as Adam Smith himself says, there's no one more stupid than a factory worker. And so putting up a situation where those people would be in a context that they would be mentally degraded, or as we saw in our little film presentation of North and South, you have situations that could be detrimental to their health or detrimental to their safety, as we see in Bangladesh, entire factories collapsing and killing 300 workers. Just these possibilities of, you seem to see very vividly the prospect of government corruption. Would you not also say there's a possibility of business corruption arising as well in a sort of economic system where there is no influence or no regulation by the government?
Yes, I definitely do think that would be a possibility. However, I also think that would be much harder the scale of it would be much smaller and therefore much less detrimental to society as a whole. Even if one business owner did that, even if they all did, that would lead to the potential for a new business owner to start a business, thus undermining the other people because the workers would choose to go to the new business that would treat them well, giving them a surplus of workers and giving them an advantage over their competitors.
Well, as businesses become more specialized in their work, they tend to be able to do jobs with fewer and fewer workers actually needed. And so if businesses can effectively continue to be more productive with fewer workers, that would mean there'd be more and more people put out of work, and the possibility of having other businesses to go to might not be there. And so if you have a situation where there's not a lot of labor available for people on a more menial scale, they may not have those choices. And so if the businesses know that those people don't have really many other choices, then they could be in a situation where they'd feel just fine about not actually employing any significant safety precautions.
Yes, it is a potential, but then again, two competing businesses are competing for the most business. If one of them starts to employ that would give the other business an opportunity to expand and grow itself by offering the other workers at the one business better opportunities to grow, thus making it so it'd be much harder for them to be corrupt if everyone is constantly competing.
Well, but when businesses are competing against each other, they have to compete on basis of price. And the business that's successful is the one that produces things at the lowest price. And quite oftentimes, safety measures and safety precautions are quite expensive. And so you have to realize that the business that perhaps has the worst safety infractions will be the one that's most successful in the market because it can bring its products to market at the lowest price.
Yes, however, as soon as they're doing that, the workers will realize that they're working in unsafe conditions, and they would choose, if possible, to leave that business. And then if people are leaving the business, that would damage the business, because if they can't get enough workers, their production will either slow down or stop, thus forcing them to either increase safety measures or just go out of business.
All right, but what would be the problem with having the government interfere in a situation like that where, let's say, like we'll take our example from our North and South film, that air quality in the factory is poor and leading to people having a lung disease. that the government simply imposes a equal requirement on all businesses to have a certain level of air quality in their business establishments, and so that they don't have to compete by making the cheapest price. They all have to produce goods using the same equal safety procedures, so that it's not just one business that tries to become safer and it has to raise its prices to afford that. All businesses have to do it equally, and so you have a level playing field, and workers are protected from that sort of situation.
Yes, that would work. However, the problem is that as soon as you give the government the power to do that, why can't they impose regulations on other things too? The competition between the businesses should be enough to keep the workers safe, because as soon as one starts ditching the safety measures, the workers will realize that and will choose to leave it and go work at the other, thus possibly creating a surplus for that one. However, as the one business shrinks, it allows the other business to expand, creating more labor for the workers, creating more work for the workers.
All right, thank you very much. I just wanted to make a little contrast between your understanding of the free market and how it would work. You say the free market theory appears to have the least in common with the concept developed by Plato. In both the free market and Plato's economic system, there's an entity that rules for the common good and a state which is ordered with a view to the good of the whole. Plato's ruling entity would be, of course, the philosopher king. In a free market, however, the market or entirety of the people decide what is best for the society as a whole. In Plato's Republic, e poli, the many, really were not considered to be capable of really having any good guidance on the government. The people or the many needed to have the philosophers rule over them. In a free market economy, it seems to be the many are in charge. And so it's just kind of the opposite of Plato's monarchy. You have, in a free market economy, you have the many. And, well, is it really to the best interest of everyone to allow the many to be in charge of the direction of a country? For instance, let's take music. Now, it appears that the many in our culture like fairly simplistic and bombastic music. All right? Now, this would be very disconcerting to Plato, and he believed that music was extraordinarily important for the shaping of people's souls. And so, wouldn't it be better to have some people who actually have some musical understanding guide the musical selections of the country and make sure only good music is purchased that would be beneficial to people's souls?
With the example of music, that's harder to do because comes down to personal preference. So even while you or I might not like the sort of music other people like, that does not mean that that sort of music is necessarily bad or not good. So as soon as one person is regulating for everyone, they are going to do what they think is best, not what everyone else thinks is best. When everyone gets to decide what is best, it will come down to the most people having what they want instead of one person deciding what they think the most people would want.
And do you think it's actually beneficial for a culture that the many have the freedom to choose their wants from themselves rather than being guided by the government?
Yes, I do very much have this freedom I think people do deserve.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Hertel. And now let's go ahead and see who might have some questions for you. Yeah, once again, Ben, you need to move over here if you want the camera to pick you up. All right. Go ahead, Anna. Yes. Oh, and if I can interrupt you for a second, Anna, we have a lot of people here who don't have their videos on. If I could please once again ask you guys to get your video on so we can see everybody. Benjamin, Heidi, Josh, Lily, Sophia, Sarah. Let's everybody get your video on so Tate can see all of your faces and know who he's asking questions of. So go ahead, Anna.
Okay, so I have a small chain of questions. So first, would you admit to the necessity of the contract in economics?
I would.
Okay. So in a free market society, how would you say that the contract is enforced?
contract itself should be enforced by the government.
So, but I believe you said that the free market has no governmental interference. So how would the contract be enforced in a free market society?
The economics themselves have no government interference, so everything that the businesses do with the prices for their production is only up to them. As soon as they have a written contract between each other, the contract itself is something the government would enforce. The government would have no power over anything else. They would only have the power to enforce what was originally agreed upon between the two companies.
Okay, and I just have one additional question. So there was one point in your paper where you stated that capitalism is not the ideal economic system for mankind because the government has the ability to impose mandatory prices. So why does that make that system invalid?
It doesn't make it invalid, it just means it's not the best form of economic system to employ.
Why so?
Just for example, the Great Depression is actually worsened partially by the government enforcing prices, which would not have happened if the government had just left it alone instead of setting mandatory prices.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Tate.
Now see the local is? Yes.
Yes, alright. So Tate, excellent paper, but my question is concerning the dividing line between the different systems of economics. Firstly, is there a specific policy dividing line between capitalism and then anything that's further towards Marxism of that? So is there a specific policy decision that is the dividing line between those, or is it really just a matter of intent of what the government wants to enforce as a system? So is the difference between those two systems really about policy, or is it about the government's intent, or is it just kind of a more grayish line before it stops being capitalism? Like, what would you say is the end of capitalism before it starts shifting into something more Marxist?
I would probably say it's more intent because our government can and does at times impose mandatory prices. So that would basically, in my opinion, be basically the same as Marxism, because it's not the government setting the prices, it's the government saying you have to set a price at. So basically that's what would come down to the same thing. So I would say it's intent probably.
And the picture I'm getting from your opinion of these different systems is sort of like what a very bad Christian or a very bad Muslim or a very bad person of any religion would say, where, I mean, they're all decent, but this one's just a lot better than the others. Is that your opinion concerning capitalism and Marxism? Like, they all have a little bit of, they all got a little bit of truth in them, but it's just that capitalism is the most efficient.
Yes, I definitely would say that I have a little bit of truth.
And concerning Marxism, would it ever, because Marxism is not a completely unlegitimate system of government, or illegitimate system of government, would there ever be a time when it's actually because of ideological reasons or because of a specific circumstance, it was actually better for a government to go through the process of being a Marxist government rather than a capitalist government? Or is capitalist better in every circumstance?
I would say that Marxism could be a good form of government to employ if it is very small in scope. So I would say that Marxism is bad for a large government to employ or over a large area. So I think it would be very hard to have a large working Marxist government that would be efficient. Or if it's very small in scope, I believe it would work.
Alright. Thank you.
I am.
Okay, so good job on your paper. That was very well written. And so in your paper, you also speak of mandatory prices and government interference along with corruption of economics and capitalism. But isn't capitalism sort of like a partnership between the government and people rather than one or the other monopolizing the other? Like sort of keeping each other in balance?
It is supposed to function as a partnership, but given power, the government can turn that partnership into where it is either the government that pays the people.
Okay, but don't the people have a little bit of control over the economy as well? Because they could just sort of like corporate unions, they could just sort of strike against the government, or maybe just refuse to buy something that the government overpriced or impose taxes upon too much.
They can, assuming that everyone would actually band together to do that, and also that would just lead to what if that product is actually a necessity for people to have. It would be very hard to impose mandatory prices on, I don't know, all meat, and meat went up hugely. That would be very hard for people to live without having any meat ever.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Then,
Okay, can you hear me? Alright, so you're talking about like how a free economy is like the best and the most high, but don't you think that like if you had a free economy, eventually mistakes would happen and people will make rules, and over time it will become more of a government-owned economy over time, and then don't you think that would happen or not happen?
I think that could potentially happen. However, it would be up to the people to enforce their freedoms and keep the government from actually taking control.
But what would happen if like a government uprising happens and it sort of happens without people really trying to stop it, but they're trying to stop it, and it happens either way, but then you have now choosing a freedom and then it becomes a government either way, then like wouldn't you want rules, like wouldn't you have to have rules to stop that and then sort of rules with freedom still, or be like a freedom, just complete freedom, or freedom with like certain rules?
Can you say that a different way, please?
Sorry. So if you had a free economy, would it be like a free economy with certain rules, keeping out making a government, or would it be just a complete free economy with anyone can do whatever they want?
Okay, so I'm not saying that I'm not saying there should not be a government. I'm saying that the government should have no control over the economic state. It would be completely separate.
Alright, thank you.
Jonathan.
So good job, by the way. I saw a couple comments that said that you said you weren't going to do a good job. Good job anyway. So, given that the Marxist economy is intimately tied with, or the Marxist government is intimately tied with the economy, which government would be best? Which economy would the democratic government suit best?
I'm not completely sure on that one. I would lean towards they would want it to be more of a Marxist economy.
So, the democratic, would capitalism or free market suit the democratic government best?
I would say capitalism.
Okay. One more question. Given the rise of technology and supercomputers and all that, would it be possible for a supercomputer to change the prices for a Marxist government in a way that
Potentially, however, it would have to know exactly what the people wanted, and I think that would be very hard to do with just, even with our technology today, I think it would be very hard to have one system setting the prices for the entire country. The country of the United States has just a huge number of stores, and every store would have to be government controlled and linked in, and then if the system broke once, or even for a day, everything would have the potential to fall completely apart, which would leave potentially many people in a very bad situation.
Okay, thank you.
Ella?
Well, really good job. You took some really large-scale ideas and condensed them well and explained them well, so good job there. So I have two questions that kind of lead into each other. So I'm going to start with, so you talked about class a lot, and one of the things you mentioned as a downfall of a more Marxist system is that you can't go up the social ladder simply because there is none. So is that a bad thing though, and then why do you think it is?
Okay, so you break down a little bit more. Were you asking that is it a bad thing that you cannot move up in a Marxist economy, basically?
Basically, yeah. Is that because it's more equal, is that inherently a bad thing, or does it just not provide opportunity?
I don't know if it's an inherently bad thing, but I think it would greatly diminish the desire for people to want to be a productive member of society. If they know they can't advance themselves, I think they would have less incentive to try to work hard and better themselves if they can't actually do it. They know that they get nowhere.
Okay, and so then following from that, comparing that system to a more like a caste system, like how it used to be in India, how there's no movement between castes, is having a system without those classes better than having ones that have the classes but you can't move between them? Or is there not a difference?
Okay, so again, there's a little hard here, but you asked me if it's better to have a system with or without classes, basically?
Basically, like, is it better to have systems without class, or is it better to have systems with class that don't allow for mobility?
I would say it's better to have a system without classes that allows for personal betterment.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, local.
Good job, by the way. It was very well summarized and expounded upon. I was just wondering, what do you personally think would be the perfect economic system? Like, in a perfect world, or just in your mind, what do you think would be the perfect system? Because you explained all the different systems very well, and concluded that free market was the most legitimate out of the three, but yeah, what do you think would be the perfect one?
I would personally say that a free market economy would be the best.
Thank you.
Just because of the freedom it offers.
Other questions for Mr. Hertel? And by the way, those of you who do not have your videos on, I cannot tell if you have your hand raised, so you need to turn your video on for me to see you. All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Hertel. Very nicely done. All right, and we have a few minutes before his sister will come on, Miss Hertel, and so would Jake just come a couple minutes and take a break, and then we'll come back for her.